Welcome back to another episode of Disney Unpacked. It's me, Len Testa, and this is episode 1 of season 2 of this series.
Which we'll be recording in February of 2024, though this episode won't actually debut till the dog days of summer later this year.
Wait, hold on now. Are you telling me that of all the characters and all the things on this planet now, that dogs also have a holiday? Is that what you're telling me? Guys, how long do I have before I got to go out and get a card for my little doggy?
Well, not actually that much time. As it turns out, the
Oh,
dog days of summer occur between July 3rd and August 11th. It's
Wait,
during the
it's an actual thing?
It's an actual thing. It's that span in the calendar when Sirius, the dog star, can be seen every morning just above the horizon, which is why this stretch of warm weather has the name that it does.
Okay, so I learned something already. We're 30 seconds
hmm
into the show. That's fantastic. But Jim, are we using the dog days of summer as a ploy, an excuse, an alibi, if you will, to explore the age-old Disney question, who or what is Goofy? A dog? A man? Some sort of like hybrid?
Oh, there are things I'll never unsee, and this is one of them, guys. What you just outlined is wrong in so many ways. This is a mental mouthwash I have to apply, and I think the only way we're ever going to do that is to focus on something else and do it quickly. So, how about we look at something else? Let's look at the footage of that day when we three visited Epcot and walked through Moana, the Journey of Water.
Oh, I love this attraction. Like every time I'm in Epcot, I try and walk through it. I really, really like it for a number of reasons. Number one, the Imagineers found a way for guests to interact with water in Epcot. And number two, not for nothing, but it also achieves two other purposes. One is it's educational, so it tells people all about the water cycle. And two, it's Disney planning ahead for these dog days of the summer when it's 110 degrees outside and everyone needs to cool off. So two birds, one scone, as the kids say.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So maybe that's what we could do with this episode of Disney Unpacked. We could talk about the history of water play at the Disney parks.
And the reason we should talk about it honestly is this is really important because you see, water and Disney have been joined at the hip for, well, almost 70 years, which is a really long time. And our little story today began in the orange groves of Southern California when the bulldozers rolled out to tear out all the beautiful ranch lands to create the rivers of America.
I mean, you need someplace to park the Mark Twain, so I get
Yeah, this is true. You can't dry dock in dust. Believe me, I've tried. But, since you brought up that famous steamboat, the Mark
it.
Twain, let me step into my Wayback Machine right over here. And we will now talk about, well, we'll talk about the day Disneyland itself was dedicated to the public
Mhm.
and opened on July of 1955.
Okay, so looking in on the dedication of the Mark Twain, I see Art Linkletter. He was the host of Dateline Disneyland, the live TV special that was broadcast on ABC, and that's actress Irene Dunn, and she's holding a bottle of champagne because she's about to christen the Mark Twain.
Yeah, and don't look now, but what she was wearing was as important as the vintage of champagne she was holding. To be very specific, she was a woman of her time. She was wearing a tasteful assembly of pearls and high heel shoes and don't forget the white gloves. Based on the way this woman walked out of her house that day to open and christen the Mark Twain, you can tell she didn't plan to get wet.
Well, and as they say, pearls go with everything.
Yeah, but she's dressed like that for Disneyland's grand opening, which July is
Mhm.
is quite the commitment there, Miss Dunn.
She was a precursor of every female who walked into the park those opening years. Everyone was dressed to the nines because
Mm.
Disneyland as a place was an important place to go to and to be seen.
Every day was Dapper Day back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, very nearly so. They didn't have the name, but the intent was there definitely. And the women who dressed up to go to the Disneyland park that day, dressed in their Sunday best,
Mm.
they didn't have on their agenda getting wet.
Oh yeah, I mean some of those clothes like silks. I don't think you can get wet, right? That'd be bad.
No, no, okay, no, wait a minute. The Matterhorn opened at Disneyland in what, June of '59.
Yeah, that was the month.
Okay, and the bobsleds were hugely popular with visitors, and
Oh,
those cars splashed down in alpine pools at the base of Matterhorn Mountain.
Yeah, but those chlorinated alpine pools weren't there just for appearance, guys. They were actually part of the braking mechanism for the roller coaster ride. It didn't stop the vehicles, but it did slow them down.
what about the splash at Pirates of the Caribbean? Was it the same thing?
Exactamont. That
Mhm,
water also wasn't being deliberately applied to your body to surprise or even to amuse you, but it was part
mhm,
of the Matterhorn ride system, and it was also part of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride system.
mhm.
Which, you know what? I think we need to stop for a moment and take a moment to decide and describe exactly what we're going to be talking about today's show and what we mean when we describe water play.
Right, because these are water elements in rides, but it's not actually anything I think that you and I would call play. So what
Mhm.
would it be?
Okay, this is going to be a mouthful, but bear with. Water play should always be defined as an activity that the guest chooses to be involved in. I mean, that's a real criteria. They have to choose. For something, therefore, to be considered true water play, the guest has to be an active participant in the experience, in the activity. Just getting wet unintentionally from water that didn't intend to be wet or didn't have any say in or any desire to participate
Hmm,
in, that's not water play. That's a water activity.
interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, so there has to be some element of agency or deliberation involved on the guest part. Okay, I'll take that. What Jim then would you say would be like the first or the first major water play theme park experience then in a Disney theme park?
All right, we're now obviously talking about Walt Disney World and the role that outdoor recreation played or still plays in a Florida vacation.
Exactly. Exactly. How else would you explain the fact that when you look at this early piece of advertising art for Walt Disney World,
Mhm,
what you see, are all the people who are not in the park, but they're enjoying outdoor activities outside the park. I mean, in the
mhm,
marketing brochures, it was just as important to sell the guests to come to Disney World in Florida because they could experience, water skiing, swimming pools, all the good stuff that you have in a summer vacation in a warm weather climate where there's a lot of water.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you look at these Disney advertisements, they're basically telling you, "Don't go on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Please come to
mhm.
Fish for Bass in Mr. Alligator's mosquito-infested swamp."
Okay,
Yeah,
but
Not
cool.
so many words, and there's probably some legal
yeah,
disclaimer in there or something.
yeah, yeah.
But well, look, the people depicted in this advertising art are supposed to be vacationing in Florida, right? And since Walt Disney World has Bay Lake and Seven Seas Lagoon, not to mention places to swim at the Contemporary, the Poly, for Wilderness, of course, these people are going to find time to get out on the water while they're staying at the Walt Disney World Resort.
And Jim, the key word in your description, let me underline it. It's
Mm,
vacationing.
mm,
The reason is because people use Disneyland in California very, very, very differently than they use Walt Disney World in Florida. Because, I know my family would drive in their car down the I-5 from Sherman Oaks down to Anaheim for a day's worth of fun in Anaheim. And you know
mhm.
what? At the end of the day, we all just got back in the station wagon and the kids went to sleep and his dad drove home.
All right. Whereas in Florida, Disney
Mhm.
World has always been a vacation destination. Whether you drove or whether you flew, you were going to be there for a couple of days, and you were going to be in Florida a
Mhm.
lot longer. That's a true vacation, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and when you have a true vacation, you can tell me, what did your family typically do on a true vacation in Florida?
Okay, so we hit the pool, we swam, we got horribly sunburned,
Yeah.
so
Well,
Some of you got carried away by large mosquitoes, but
there we
the
go.
strong
Right.
survived, and that was the
That,
important thing.
there you go.
the reality is that, the Central Florida sun, as we all know,
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
gets hot. Therefore, people, they really did like that cooling water play that they'd get.
Mhm.
And so, where would this have happened back in early 1971 when the Magic Kingdom opened? Where in Walt Disney World would guests have encountered their first sort of like water spritz, if you will?
Well, that's why we got into the Wayback Machine a couple of
Mhm.
moments ago, because here we stand in front of the Leaky Tiki's in Adventureland at the Magic Kingdom.
The leaky tikis.
Come on, Hill, give it up for Leaky Tikis. I mean, man, what has a Leaky Tiki ever done to you?
Oh, come on. These things are one step above your brother nailing you with a squirt gun.
Ah, but I got you there because your brother never had a squirt gun that was designed by not one, but two Disney legends. I'm
Mm.
speaking now of Mark Davis, who came up with the design of the tikis, and then Rolly Crump, who actually sculpted them.
I didn't know that. When were these installed, Jim Scholl?
Oh, let's see. The Leaky Tikis were originally installed in Adventureland Plaza at the Magic Kingdom for the summer of 1972. And given the tens of millions of times that these soaking, spritting statues turned up on people's photographs on their Florida vacation, it was very, very clear, very, very quickly to the Florida management at Disney World that these tikis may have been low tech. However, the visitors to the Magic Kingdom just love them to death.
Oh, all right, all right. I'll grant you the Licky Tikis are nicely designed and well sculpted, but right across the way is the Sunshine Pavilion and all of its animatronic birds. A very technologically sophisticated show, especially for the early 1970s, whereas the Leaky Tikis had primitive mechanics. If you stood in front of these things and waited long enough, eventually you'd get spritzed. I mean, big whoop.
Okay, hold on. Whoop aside, you got to remember this was the early 1970s.
Mhm.
And in time, the technology that powered the water play at the Disney parks, it would be taking a big leap. Or should I say, leapfrog.
And that, my friends, is what we call in the business foreshadowing. All right. So this is happening in Florida. We get the Leaky Tikis. What's happening in Disneyland? Are they getting the same sort of thing? Are they getting other water play elements? What's going on there?
Well, turning the pages of our calendar forward now to the 1970s, well, things did change. For example, people stopped wearing white gloves and pearls when they went to Disneyland. I mean, I know I did. But they then switched to more casual clothes like t-shirts and shorts.
Mhm.
But, LA climate did not change in those times. It was going to be hot and it was going to be cold every winter and every summer.
Mhm.
Yeah, and cold and wet are not a good mix, especially when you're in wet clothes walking around a theme park for hours on end.
There was still countering that the fact that in
Mhm.
California there was an increasing demand for water play. I mean, a
Mhm.
number of Disneyland's competitors started to come up with new and exciting water play activities for the guests. And guess what? The guests love those.
Okay. I mean, I guess earliest example that I can think of is what Roaring Rapids at Magic Mountain. That came online, what, 1981?
Jim Hill, are you saying that Disney was pressured into building water play rides?
Oh, we take a moment.
Okay. Len's making water
Were
pressure jokes.
did they feel like their
Okay.
financials were in hot water?
Oh.
Were things bubbling up inside the company?
Oh.
Okay. All right. Oof. Okay. Anyway, during this period in Disney company history, yes, the Imagineers were legitimately trying to deliver on what company management was asking for. I mean, one example of that would be, again, the wave machine that was installed in Seven Seas Lagoon along the shores of the Polynesian resort.
And we've talked about that before on the Disney dish. And the big thing there was that the wave machine was so powerful that it actually eroded the beach at the Polynesian. I would call that a washout.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, there was
Yeah.
River Country, which gave visitors to Walt Disney World all sorts of different ways to go play in the water.
But again, let's just be clear here for a moment. This isn't really the same thing as water play. And also, just to underscore, I would argue now that River Country wasn't really a big success for Disney World.
Jim Scholl, fighting words.
Mhm.
All right. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt here. Go ahead.
Okay, as long
Please
as you don't
explain.
as long as you don't fight me with puns, I'll accept your challenge.
Okay.
The reason that the Disney World decided to build their very first water park,
Which again was deep down inside of the Fort Wilderness campground along the shores of Bay Lake.
okay, thank you, Professor Exposition. Now, turning back to our story,
Mhm.
the location was a challenge for most Disney park visitors to ever get to because it was its own kind of remote destination. I mean, you had to go and take your life in your hands, because just might happen to be that because their parking lot was so very small, if you drove up after 9 o'clock, you'd be seeing a sign saying, "I'm sorry, park full. We reached our capacity."
How small was the park?
Oh, it was what, 6.5 acres?
Holy cow! Really? How big is Typhoon Lagoon?
Well, that's 56. And just in case you're wondering, Blizzard Beach is even bigger than that. It's 66 acres.
But more importantly, when we look at the two water parks and we add them together and then we apply them to the Disney World Resort, they were both deliberately built in locations now that guests were going to be finding it very, very easy to get to. I mean, people had learned from their old first take at doing a water park. They learned from their mistakes. I mean, both of the new water parks had parking lots right off of Buena Vista Drive, and they had easy parking.
Yeah, that's true. They're very easy to get to. But let me steer us back into the direction we were originally going. Water parks are great because you're in the water there, right? But today we're talking about playing with water. Where do you think the first water play attraction was?
Well, Len, I'd say to let the record show that the very first time true water play happened in a Disney park was at the Journey to Imagination.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, okay.
At Epcot. I mean, we all know at that point they had technology that they never had before. And for the first time, those technologies allowed water not just to become an object, but actually to become a character, something that guests could interact with and play with.
I would bet that there's more than one internal Disney document on the subject of laminar flow when it came to those fountains, because there's a lot of physics behind that I think a lot of people don't appreciate. It's really hard to do those fountains.
Yeah, there was a lot of research, which took a lot of money and a lot of hours from very specialized engineers developing water flow nozzles, laminar flow nozzles, and you have to treat the water, you have to purify the water. Not because the water wasn't good enough to drop on the guests, but the water has to be super pure to be able to pass through the nozzles. Anyway, long story short, we take it for granted today, but at the time, all of that was really a moonshot.
And the amazing thing, is that when the three of us were in Epcot and we were going through Journey of Water, I think every single person around us was actively trying to get wet as they were going from one of the interactive stations to another. In fact, some of the interactive stations explicitly require you to get wet. Remember the strings of water that fell in a harp and it made like a water-based harp?
Oh yeah,
you have to get wet to play that.
Yeah, no, it's a very intentional water play, very structured and very, very good. Now that we've all been to the Journey of Water, guys, do you have any ideas on how they did it?
That, I have to admit, is a mystery to me. I have been told by cast members that a lot of the tech that powers this attraction, which tracks your body movement and sets the water features in motion, it's all hiding in plain sight. But I'd be damned if I could, point toward it.
For your answer, I'm going to give you a big fat water balloon.
Yay!
Yeah, okay.
So the next time you walk through the Journey of Water, please pay attention to all those hanging baskets.
Oh, those are they baskets? I thought they were birds' nests.
Len, what do you call nests? Well, those nests have a sensor array inside which tracks the guest motions to command a water response. I mean, the technology that's hidden in plain sight, I think that's what makes Journey of Water a masterclass when it comes to fusing technology and water play together.
I mean, and not for nothing, Jim Shull, but we happen to be back in Epcot, the same park where Disney really started with those leaping water fountains back in 1982. So that doesn't hurt either.
That said, though, I mean, at times have certainly changed since back then. I don't recall the water play area outside of the Imagination Pavilion ever featuring a warning sign that said, "Do not use the fountain if you are ill with diarrhea."
But the reality is that sign is more the doing of legal department of Disney than it is of the Imagineers or their choice. That also explains the other line on this sign in Epcot's Journey to Water, and I quote, "For safety, diaper-age children must wear..." Should I continue?
Yeah. Before we completely gross everybody out, two quick things. One, my understanding is that the signs are there, and the fact, and also we haven't talked about this, but Journey of Water has bathrooms, and my understanding is that according to Florida law, there are so many there's so much water and so many water play areas that Journey of Water counts as a pool under Florida law. And it has to have those warnings, and it has to have that restroom to comply with Florida law. It's essentially a giant pool. Anyway, before we completely gross out our Disney Unpacked viewers with all of the things that you can't do in a pool, let's pull the plug on today's water show. What's next on our video series, folks?
Ooh, well, then next month, which is just around the corner, we're going to be taking to the air, and we're going to be talking about one of Disneyland's opening year rides. One that's since gone on to travel around the globe is the one and the only Dumbo the Flying Elephant.
Which, by the way, is the only attraction that can be found in all 6 of Disney's castle parks.
Yes, indeed. It's a tale full of flapping ears, disco balls, and not to forget, elephant milking.
When did this show diverge into animal husbandry? Like, that's what I want to know. It's like a 4-H show at this point. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, mark your calendars, because that episode debuts on the first Sunday of next month.
And if you have any questions that relate to stories we touched on in today's show, please send them along to contact@disneyunpacked.com.
And we'll then answer those questions as part of the very next edition of our Disney Unpacked Q&A podcast. Plus, on our next Disney Unpacked Carry-On, we'll cover the stories that we just didn't have time to cover in detail during this show. While on our next Picture This, Mr. Shull and I will be sharing stories about images that you've likely never seen before.
And beyond that, we'd like to thank Eric Hersey for producing today's show. So until next month's show, this is Len on behalf of Jim Shull and Jim Hill. Thank you for watching this episode of Disney Unpacked.